All right, so, everyone's curious about English Central. This deep dive, we're going to figure out how this platform helps people learn English.
Okay.
We've got a white paper, explains their approach, and some stuff right from their website.
Right.
So I'm always kind of skeptical, when a platform says it's the way to be fluent.
Yeah.
But I'm open to being convinced. So, first off, what makes English Central different from just watching any video online?
Well, yeah, just passively watching videos that might not make you fluent, right? But English Central, they use something that we already like to do,
Okay.
watching videos, and they use it to help us learn.
So you're saying they're turning entertainment into education. I get the appeal, but how does that actually, translate into learning a language?
It's all about intrinsic motivation. Basically, you're going to stick with something, if you enjoy it. And it sounds like they've got a lot of different videos, thousands.
Wow.
Yeah, and they add 30 new lessons every week. So there's really something for everyone.
Yeah, I can see that. If I could choose videos, like things that I was interested in, I'd probably practice more. But I'm thinking, even if the videos are fun to watch, wouldn't that still leave some gaps in actually learning the language?
Well, that's where comprehensible input comes in. It's a fancy way of saying that the language you're exposed to, it's got to be challenging enough so you grow, but not so hard that you just give up.
Okay, yeah.
And that's what English Central does. Their content's organized by level, so it gets harder as you get better.
So it's not like you're just thrown in the deep end.
Exactly.
Okay, good, good.
Yeah.
I tried learning Spanish once by watching a telenovela.
Oh, wow.
Disaster. Total disaster.
Yeah.
So this level-based thing,
Yeah.
that's good. So it's gradual.
Yeah, it's like if you're training for a marathon, you wouldn't just start by running 20 miles.
Right, right.
You got to build up to it. And what's cool is they do this not just for the videos themselves, but also for the vocabulary. Like the words and phrases that you're learning, they make sure that they're at your level.
Okay.
Which just makes everything like way more effective.
Yeah, that level of personalization, that's great. But you know me, I'm all about actually speaking the language.
Yeah.
To be fluent, you got to practice speaking. Does English Central do anything for that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They have this instant feedback system. So you can record yourself speaking and then compare it to like a native speaker. And that kind of feedback, it really helps you to notice the gap, which is just the idea that to fix a mistake, you got to know that you're making it.
So you can't just passively listen. You have to be, active about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Identify those areas that need work. I like that. But, speaking, it can be scary, especially when you're a beginner. I mean, how does English Central, how do they help people get over that fear?
They use the silent period, which is basically a time when you're just taking in information. No pressure to speak. It's really common in language learning.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and English Central gets that. So they give you a safe space to practice speaking without feeling judged.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've seen some shy students just blossom on the platform.
Really?
They were nervous at first, but they got the confidence to speak up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like a stepping stone to speaking in the real world.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. It seems like they really, really thought about creating like a supportive and encouraging environment for people learning English.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, right? Speaking practice, that's missing with a lot of online language stuff.
Yeah.
Most platforms, they focus on reading and writing and listening. But does English Central really put speaking first?
Yeah, they do. And in the white paper, they point out that in this day and age, speaking skills, they're super important. The world's getting smaller.
Right.
So being able to communicate in English, it's not just a luxury anymore. It's kind of a necessity.
Yeah.
Especially, for things like international business or diplomacy or even tourism.
Yeah, it's not just about passing a test or getting a grade in a class anymore.
Right.
It's about actually being able to thrive in a globalized world.
Huh.
So they make a good point there. But how exactly do they go beyond just the old ways of teaching it to help people become fluent speakers?
Well, they have the feedback system and the silent period that we already talked about, but they also use this speech recognition technology called IntelliSpeech. It analyzes your pronunciation and then gives you feedback in real time.
Oh, wow. So it's like having a personal pronunciation coach, right there in your pocket.
It is. And they don't just focus on textbook pronunciation. They want you to be able to actually communicate clearly.
Because the goal is to be understood, right?
Yeah.
Not to sound like some robot.
Exactly. It's about connecting with people.
I'm really starting to see how they stand out. But their website mentions a blended learning model. What does that even mean?
That's a great question. So English Central, it's not meant to be a standalone thing. It's supposed to work with traditional learning, like in a classroom.
Gotcha.
Teachers can use it for extra practice or to reinforce what they're teaching in class.
Oh, that's cool. Like a bridge between online learning and the classroom.
Exactly. And they've even got a free system for teachers where they can create custom assignments, monitor student activity, all that stuff. It's like extending the learning beyond the classroom.
Wow, that's impressive. I'm seeing why you're so interested in this. It's not just an app, it's a whole system.
It is. They really have a vision.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more about this watch, learn, speak method.
That's their approach.
Sounds simple enough.
It is, but there's a lot to it. The white paper explains how each step is designed to keep learners engaged and prevent them from feeling overwhelmed.
Okay, so walk me through it. Let's start with watch. How's their video content any different from just watching a YouTube video?
Well, for one thing, their videos are picked specifically for learning, so they're not just random. They expose learners to different accents, vocabulary, and grammar, but it's all structured and engaging.
So it's like having a tour guide leading you through the world of English.
Exactly. And to make it even better, they have interactive features like subtitles and glossaries. You can even slow down the playback speed.
Oh, cool. So learners can control how fast or slow they go.
Yeah. And it helps with repetition, which is so important in language learning. You know, the more you hear something, the better you learn it.
Yeah, repetition is key. But wouldn't just watching videos get boring after a while, even with those features?
That's where the learn part comes in.
Okay.
This is where you really dive deep into the language you saw in the videos. It uses interactive exercises to target specific vocabulary, grammar, and even pronunciation.
So it's about actively working with the language, not just listening.
Right. They've even gamified some of the learning with quizzes, flashcards, and games.
I like games, but as long as they're actually educational, how do they make sure it's not just about playing games?
That's a good question. They use points and badges and things like that, which can be motivating, but the main focus is still on mastering the language.
That's good to hear. I've seen some platforms that go way too far with the game stuff, and it ends up feeling more like a game than actually learning.
Yeah.
So they've found that sweet spot.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, now I'm really curious about that last step, speak. How does that fit into everything else? We already talked about how important it is to practice speaking, but how do they handle that specifically?
This is really where English Central shines. They give learners tons of ways to use their new skills. They can record themselves reading aloud, role play based on the videos, and even have live conversations with tutors.
Hold on, live conversations with tutors.
Yeah.
Really? That sounds amazing.
It is. It's like they've found a way to connect the world of online learning with having a real teacher right there with you.
I'm blown away. They seem to have thought of everything. But before we get into that live tutoring feature, though, because I definitely want to hear more about that, let's take a minute to recap what we've learned so far.
Sounds good.
So, to sum it up, English Central uses videos to make language learning fun and motivating. And they structure their lessons around this idea of comprehensible input to make sure it's challenging but not too difficult. And then they really emphasize actually speaking the language, going way beyond what other platforms do.
Exactly. They've really created this complete learning package.
Yeah, and they've done it while considering how people learn best. You know, like really tailoring the approach to the individual.
Absolutely. They're not just throwing technology at the problem. They're using it in a smart way to make learning better.
I love that. Okay, but there's still so much more to uncover, like that Go Live feature you mentioned. Tell me more about how that works and how it fits in with everything else.
All right, let's dive back in.
Let's do it. I want to see how they're making online language learning more like the real world.
Okay, so this Go Live thing, it's where English Central goes beyond, you know, the usual apps. It's like you've got a tutor right there, ready when you are to practice speaking.
Oh, wow. I'm really interested in that. It seems like a perfect fit with how much they emphasize speaking.
Yeah.
But is it really effective doing it online like that? I've had some online tutoring before. It was, kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, I get it. But I think English Central's figured out how to make it work better. The cool thing is, these live sessions, they're not just random chats.
Right.
They're based on the videos you've already been watching.
Oh, that's smart. So it's not just finding some random person to talk to.
Exactly.
You're actually having a conversation that's related to the stuff you've been studying.
Right. The tutors, they know the material, so they can guide the conversation to, fit your needs.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like you have a study buddy who also happens to be a fluent English speaker.
Exactly.
And who can really help you with the material. It's brilliant.
Mm.
I mean, for someone who doesn't have a lot of chances to practice speaking in person, this could be like a game changer. It's like they're bridging that gap between learning online at your own pace and actually having like a real-life classroom experience.
It is. And they've really put a lot of effort into making sure these live sessions are good.
Mm-hmm.
All the tutors, they have to be certified and experienced in teaching English as a second language.
Okay.
And they use a really structured approach. Like there are learning objectives and activities, things to make sure you're speaking as much as possible.
I'm sold. This sounds amazing. But there's got to be a catch, right? This personalized attention, it can't be cheap.
Well, the website doesn't give specifics about the cost, but it does say that Go Live is like an extra thing.
Okay.
You don't have to do it. So it seems like they want to keep the main platform affordable, but then offer this like premium option if you want to take your speaking to that next level.
Right. I like that. It's like different levels of gym memberships. You choose what you need and what you can afford.
Exactly. It fits with their whole idea of personalization, They get that everyone learns differently and has different goals.
Yeah. They seem to have thought of everything.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with how thorough they are. It's not just about throwing some tech at the problem.
Right.
It's really about using technology in a smart way.
To actually make the learning process better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. To help people become better communicators. But okay, even though this all sounds awesome, there have to be some like downsides or limitations, right? Nothing's perfect.
That's true. And it's always good to be a little skeptical, right? So one thing that stands out based on what we've seen is that EnglishCentral is really focused on conversational fluency. It might not be the best choice for someone who needs to learn like really academic English or very technical English for their job.
Right.
Different tools for different jobs.
It's all about finding the right tool.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone just wants to improve their everyday English, it seems like EnglishCentral is a pretty great choice.
Yeah, I think so. And, even with the best platform, you still have to put in the work. You have to be motivated and practice consistently. EnglishCentral gives you the tools, but it's up to you to use them.
No platform can magically make you fluent.
Exactly.
You still have to do the work. But it does sound like EnglishCentral makes that journey more, enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely.
And maybe even more effective.
Right.
And one thing that really stuck with me from what we've read is how much they focus on personalization. They recognize that everyone has their own way of learning, their own goals, their own pace.
Right.
Which brings me to something I'm curious about. How do they handle progress tracking and feedback? It's great to have all this content and these exercises.
Right.
But how do people know if they're actually getting better?
Well, they have this really sophisticated system that tracks everything you do.
Oh, wow.
Like how many words you're learning, how accurate your pronunciation is, even your grammar.
Oh.
So you can see your strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
And you get insights into how you're doing.
So it's not just about finishing an exercise and moving on.
Yep.
They actually give you detailed information about how you're doing.
Exactly. And it's all presented in a way that makes sense and helps you stay motivated. You can see how you're improving over time, see what you've accomplished. You can even see how you compare to other learners at your level.
Oh, wow.
It's like having your own personal scorecard.
That's a great way to put it. It keeps you on track, and you can celebrate your progress.
Right. And it reminds you that language learning is a process, not just a one-time thing. You're always learning and growing.
I like that. Celebrating the small wins along the way.
Exactly.
So they track individual progress really well. But do they do anything to, build community among their learners?
They do. They've built a community right into the platform.
Oh, nice.
Learners can connect with each other, share tips, even do challenges and activities together.
I love that. Learning a language can be really isolating if you're doing it on your own.
It can.
Having that community can make such a difference.
Yeah, it reminds you that other people are going through the same thing.
I'm honestly blown away by how EnglishCentral has combined the technology with understanding how people learn.
Yeah.
They really get it.
They've created something that really works, and it's inspiring.
But okay, we've talked a lot about how great EnglishCentral is.
We have.
We need to be real, right? There's no perfect language solution.
True.
So what are some limitations that people should know about before they, jump in?
That's a good point. You always want to choose the right tool for the job.
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Yeah.
So think about your needs, your learning style, and your goals.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
One thing that stood out to me was how they talk about catering to different learning styles in the white paper.
Yeah.
A lot of platforms say they do that, but they don't really.
Right.
How does EnglishCentral approach that?
They seem to get it. They understand that everyone learns differently, and they go beyond just, the usual visual, auditory, kinesthetic stuff.
Oh, okay. I'm interested. How do they go beyond that?
They recognize that most people, they use a mix of learning styles.
Right.
And those can even change depending on what you're learning.
That makes sense.
So instead of putting people into these strict categories, they give you options.
Okay.
And you can choose what works best for you.
So it's more about letting people experiment and find what they like.
Exactly. It's about having control over your learning.
I love that. But how does that actually play out on the platform? Can you give me some examples?
Sure. So for people who are visual learners, the videos are obviously a big plus. They give you that visual context. And then they also have interactive transcripts so you can see the words while you're hearing them.
Yeah.
And they even have personalized flashcards.
Oh, cool.
With pictures and definitions.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Visual learners often need to see the language written down, and flashcards are a great way to practice. But what about auditory learners? What do they do for them?
Well, they focus a lot on spoken English.
Right.
Which is perfect for auditory learners. And they can listen to the videos over and over, focusing on different things each time.
Yeah.
They even have audio-only lessons.
Yeah, nice.
Which is perfect for people who learn best by listening or who are on the go or who just get distracted easily by visuals.
Yeah. And the speech recognition tech, that's going to be helpful for them too, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's like having a pronunciation coach right there with you. But they also have interactive exercises that really make you use your listening skills.
Okay.
Like you have to identify specific information in a dialogue, or you have to summarize a video, things like that.
So they make sure you're not just passively listening.
Exactly. You're really working with the language.
Now, what about kinesthetic learners? People who learn by doing things, hands-on.
That's a good question. And that's one area where I think they could do more. They do have some interactive exercises where you have to type or click on things, but there's not a lot that involves physical movement. So maybe they could add some virtual role-playing scenarios or activities that involve, using real objects.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But even with that, I'm still impressed with how much they do to accommodate different learning styles.
Me too. It's clear they've put a lot of thought into making their platform work for everyone.
Okay, we've talked about how EnglishCentral handles motivation, comprehensible input, speaking practice, personalized feedback, and different learning styles. Anything else that stands out to you as being particularly interesting or innovative?
Yeah, one thing I find fascinating is how they focus on developing ambiguity tolerance.
Ambiguity tolerance. I don't think I've heard of that before.
It's not something you usually hear about, but it's so important for real communication.
Okay, what is it?
Basically, it's being okay with not understanding every single word in a conversation.
Oh, okay.
It's about focusing on the overall meaning, even if you miss some details.
Right.
In real conversations, you're not going to understand everything all the time.
Especially with native speakers.
Yeah, and if you get stuck on every little word you don't know, you're going to miss the point.
Yeah, you'll miss the big picture.
And EnglishCentral gets that. Instead of just using simplified dialogues, they use real-world content like news clips, movie trailers, even TED Talks.
Wow, so they're not afraid to throw you into the deep end?
Not at all. They embrace it. They're teaching you how to deal with the messiness of real language.
I like that. It seems much more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And probably more effective in the long run. So how do they actually teach ambiguity tolerance?
Well, one way is through gisting.
Gisting.
Yeah. It's basically focusing on the main idea, even if some words are unfamiliar. And they encourage learners to use context clues, like the words and sentences around an unfamiliar word, to figure out what it means.
Oh, yeah, that's so important. It's what native speakers do all the time.
Right. But it's not usually taught to language learners.
Yeah, that's true.
But EnglishCentral makes you practice it.
Smart. So instead of getting stuck on every word, you learn to look for patterns and figure things out.
Exactly. And it's a skill that'll be useful even outside of learning English.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
In life, you're always going to run into situations where you don't understand everything perfectly.
Right. Ambiguity is everywhere.
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
They really seem to understand the little details and make a difference.
Yeah, they're really focused on preparing learners for the real world.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot. EnglishCentral's teaching methods, their technology, their focus on personalizing everything. Is there anything else that you think is important to mention?
One thing that keeps coming to mind is the people behind all of this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who are the people who created English Central? What are their stories?
That's a great point. It always makes it more interesting to know about the people behind these innovative companies.
Yeah.
What drives them? What are their goals?
Unfortunately, the materials we have don't really say much about the founders or the team.
Oh, that's a shame. I always like hearing those stories. It makes it more, human.
I agree. Maybe we can do some digging and find out more for a future episode.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'd love to learn more about them. But for now, I think it's time to wrap things up.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
So what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
You tell me. You've been doing great.
I'll stop. Okay, so English Central, they use video, interactive exercises, and personalized feedback to make learning engaging and effective.
Mm-hmm.
They put a lot of emphasis on speaking.
They do.
They teach you to be okay with not understanding everything.
Ambiguity tolerance.
Yes, and they make it work for different types of learners.
It really is a great option no matter who you are or why you're learning English.
They haven't forgotten that language is about connecting with other people.
Right.
And their platform helps you become a confident speaker.
Well said.
I think that's a great point to move on to our final thought.
All right, what do you have for our listeners today?
I want to remind everyone that learning a language, it's not just about the rules.
Okay.
It's about opening yourself up to a new way of thinking, a new culture. It can change your life.
It's true. Language can open up so many doors.
And in English Central, they've created a platform that helps you do that.
Yeah, they give you the tools to become a fluent and confident English speaker.
So, here's my challenge to our listeners.
Okay.
Think about your own experiences with learning languages. What were the good parts, the bad parts, the times you felt like you really made progress, and how might English Central have made those experiences even better? Maybe there's something you're missing, something that could unlock your language learning potential. And maybe, just maybe, English Central has the key.
I love that. Go check out English Central. You might surprise yourself.
And that's it for our deep dive into English Central.
Until next time.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep. So we're back, diving deeper into English Central. One thing that's really stuck with me is how much emphasis they put on personalization.
Yeah, it's not just about having a ton of videos. It's about making the learning experience work for each person.
Exactly. Like you were saying earlier, it's like the difference between a generic workout plan and having your own personal trainer.
Exactly. So how does English Central personalize things? Well, first, they understand that people have different reasons for learning English. Some need it for work, others for travel, some just for fun.
Okay, yeah.
And with their library, you can pick content that matches your interests.
Which keeps you motivated, right?
Right. And beyond that, they have this level system. So you're always working with material that's challenging but not impossible.
Like that Goldilocks zone you were talking about.
Exactly. And it's not like they just put you in a level and leave you there. The system tracks your progress and changes the difficulty as you go. If you're doing well, it gets harder. If you're struggling, it gives you more support.
It's like having a tutor who adjusts the lesson just for you.
Exactly. And it goes even further. They have personalized learning plans based on your goals and how much time you have.
Oh, wow. So it's really tailored to you.
Yeah, it's like having a language coach who designs a program just for you.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Especially for people who are learning on their own and don't have that structure from a class. But even with a plan, it's easy to get discouraged if you don't feel like you're making progress. So how do you know you're actually getting better with English Central?
Their feedback system is great for that. They track everything, your vocabulary, pronunciation, grammar. You get details about what you're good at and what you need to work on.
So it's not just about finishing the exercises. You get real information about how you're doing.
Right. And it's presented in a way that's helpful and encouraging. You can see how you're improving and you can compare yourself to other learners at your level.
It's like a scorecard for your progress.
Yeah. And it reminds you that language learning takes time. You're always growing.
I like that. Celebrate the small wins along the way. But what about the bigger picture? Do they do anything to create a sense of community?
Yeah, actually, they have a community built right into the platform.
Oh, cool.
Learners can connect with each other, share advice, and even do challenges together.
That's awesome. It's so easy to feel alone when you're learning a language.
Yeah.
So having that community, that can really help.
Definitely. It reminds you that you're not the only one going through this.
I have to say, I'm incredibly impressed with English Central. They've combined technology with a real understanding of how people learn.
I agree. They've created something special.
And they've done it by taking risks, by trying new things. They're not just following what everyone else is doing.
They're leaders, not followers.
Exactly. And that's why they're so interesting.
They're changing the way people learn languages.
And I think that's a great place to wrap things up. We've looked at how English Central works, what makes it different, and how it helps people learn.
We've covered a lot.
But the best way to really understand it is to try it yourself.
I agree. Go explore English Central. You might be surprised by what you discover. Maybe you'll even find your own hidden language learning talent.
I love that. And on that note, we'll say goodbye for now.
Until next time.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.